What is up everybody, Lightning here, and I am back after my few month break from YouTube with some more Legion Demon Hunter content. Today, as promised, I will be continuing my Demon Hunter PvP guide, but I'm probably going to be starting over from scratch since a lot of things have changed since I last made my first one, if that sentence makes sense. Alright, so today we're going to be starting with the talents, and let's get straight into it. On the first tier, we've got Fell Mastery, Chaos Cleave, Blind Fury. Your only talent here is Fell Mastery because it gives Fell Rush more damage and it grants Fury. It's the only one that makes your DPS actually higher. Chaos Cleave is really bad, hits an additional target for 50%, we don't really want that. Blind Fury increases the duration of I-Beam by 50%, and casting abilities in PvP as a melee class is generally a bad idea. It's even more of a bad idea considering that I-Beam does not do any significant single target damage. So unless you just want to beg people to kick you, I strongly suggest not taking this talent, and basically just take this one. On the second tier, we have two viable talents. You can either go into Prepared or Demonic Appetite. And the way Demon Hunter works with most talents is that Demon Hunter has an easy talent and a skill cap talent. The skill cap talent in this situation is going to be Prepared, but if you are uncomfortable with your Demon Hunter, then you can take Demonic Appetite and you'll still get decent value from your Chaos Strikes granting 30 Fury. But if you're making good use of your Prepared, it does line up very well with your Momentum, and it also grants you Fury, so if you're comfortable using Vengeful Retreat in a PvP environment, then I definitely suggest picking up Prepared right now. Next talent tree, we have Fellblade, First Blood, and Bloodlet. Currently, Bloodlet is the highest single target DPS, and therefore it is the one that we want to be running in PvP. It gives us a very high sustained damage, which, contrary to popular belief, Demon Hunters actually do pretty good sustained damage outside of Metamorphosis now. Even when your big cooldowns are down, you can still put out a very good amount of pressure with Bloodlet and Master of the Glaive. First Blood does have its uses. It makes it a lot easier to use Blade Dance because you're going to be using it on cooldown because it would be part of your single target rotation, whereas without First Blood you only want to be using Blade Dance in a situation where you need the 100% dodge chance, such as if you're being trained by two melee classes. Fellblade is the easy talent on this tier, which basically gives you a gap closer, which makes it easier to manage your mobility cooldowns, and not having a direct engage ability such as Charge or Death Grip. Demon Hunters can be a little bit clunky to use if you're not comfortable with them, so if you're just starting out playing your Demon Hunter, then picking up Fellblade is not a bad choice to get started off with. On the next talent tier, there is only one choice. You're going to want to go into Soul Runic because this gives you 100% leech in your Metamorphosis, which is insane. You can get some incredible healing out of this. Even though it is reduced in PvP, it's still a ridiculous amount of healing. It's very strong, and the other two talents don't even come close. I'm not even going to go over them because they suck. Alright, next talent here we have Momentum, Fell Eruption, and Nemesis. Nemesis does have the unique ability that it's countered by Paladins and Mages because they can remove it with Ice Block and Blessing of Protection. So if you're facing any of those classes, then you should never take Nemesis because they will immediately get rid of it and reduce your effectiveness, but otherwise feel free to take it if you're not comfortable running with Momentum. Fell Eruption does a little bit of damage and it stuns people for 2 seconds. It's probably the easiest talent on the tier to use. It's just a button that you press that does damage, so feel free to try it out, but it's definitely not the best one on the tier, which is obviously Momentum, because Momentum gives you the ability to control your 20% damage, so you can line up your 20% damage when you want to go increase burst. So basically you have a rotation that consists of getting to 100 Fury, using your Fell Rush or Vengeful Retreat, and then doing your damaging abilities, which is your Artifact Weapon, Throw Glaive, and Chaos Strikes. Next talent here we have two talents which you would consider, which are going to be Master of the Glaive and Unleash Power. Master of the Glaive gives you a slow and has very strong with Bloodlet, allowing your Glaive Toss to stack up to 2 charges. The slow is very helpful for keeping up with targets and is very helpful for kiting targets, and if you've ever tried to play a melee class without a slow, it is extremely clunky, so I definitely suggest picking up Master of the Glaive. It makes the class a lot more smooth to play and it is probably the strongest talent on the tier. Unleash Power will reduce the cost of your Chaos Nova and its cooldown by 30%, which makes Chaos Nova a lot easier to use, it makes it a lot stronger, but unfortunately it's just not as strong as Master of Glaive is right now, so I would not recommend picking up Unleashed Power. Demon Reborn is just bad. It makes your Metamorphosis reset some cooldowns, but it doesn't reset the cooldown on Chaos Blades anymore like it used to, so it's not really going to be considered right now. For your last talent tier, we have Chaos Blades, Fel Barrage, and Demonic. Most of the time, you'll want to be looking to get Chaos Blades. It gives you a flat 20% damage increase in PvP, which is insane. It stacks with Metamorphosis, it stacks with Momentum, so you can stack all your Swifty Burst cooldowns and do an incredible amount of burst when you time your abilities. Fel Barrage is strong in AoE situations such as Battlegrounds and World PvP. You can unleash a pretty strong amount of damage with this, and it also generates charges from any AoE damage you do, so the more targets you're hitting, the more charges of Fel Barrage you get, and the more AoE damage you can do. So if you're just doing casual BGs, then I definitely recommend getting Fel Barrage. Keep in mind that Fel Barrage can be kicked, and if you do get kicked on Fel Barrage, you are locked out of a couple of your abilities, so keep that in mind and be mindful of people who can interrupt your Fel Barrage. The last talent on the tier is Demonic, and this is personally my favourite talent on the tier because it gives you a lot more versatility, where you can use your I-Beam and proc your Demon Form, which is going to give you a small burst window and a window where you can capitalize on the 100% on the leech from Metamorphosis. Unfortunately, in this moment, Chaos Blades is the strongest single target damage, and is probably the one you want to take unless you really think that you're going to need that extra survivability outside of Metamorphosis. Feel free to try out all these three talents. I definitely think they all have their own merits, but Chaos Blades is going to be the strongest one for now. Okay, now I'm going to go over the honor talents for the Havoc Demon Hunter. On the first tier, we are going to always want to go for the Gladiator's Medallion, because we need a trinket as a Demon Hunter. On the second tier, it's going to be done between Reinforced Armor or Sparring. If you're facing a large amount of melee classes, such as if you're queuing into a TSG or a Turbo Cleave, you're always going to want to take Sparring. In other situations, such as against casters, where you're not going to get the value from Sparring, you want to take Reinforced Armor. On the third tier, it comes down to what type of PvP you're in. For most situations, you're going to want Cover of Darkness, because it gives your Darkness a 70% chance for attacks to miss, which is a very helpful cooldown to use on your teammates, such as when your healer is getting opened on by a rogue and a mage, you can drop your Darkness on them and spare them from using any of their cooldowns. Solitude is also a good talent to consider, especially when you're playing 2v2 with a healer, because in that situation you're going to be 15 yards away from your healer at pretty much all the time, and 15% damage is really helpful to help you secure the kill by yourself. So I pretty much only run this when I'm doing 2v2 with a healer. Glimpse can have some fringe uses. I mean, 3 seconds of blur. If you're getting trained super hard by something, then you might want to consider this, but for general usage I would not recommend it. On the next tier we have Reverse Magic, which is going to be our preferred choice. Basically what this does is, it's like a Paladin Hand of Sacrifice. It removes magical CCs from yourself and from everyone in range. So you can remove Polymorph and Fear from your healer. You can also remove things like Entangling Roots and Frost Nova from yourself, which is really great because Demon Hunters kind of lack a way of their baseline kit to get out of roots, and this makes up for that issue somewhat, even though roots are not very common, so it's very easy to make sure that you're never in a root when you have Reverse Magic. Other than that, you can take Unending Hatred if there's nothing to dispel on the enemy team, such as, for example, you're facing a Turbo Cleave, there's a Warrior and a Enhanced Shaman. The Enhanced Shaman is going to be using some spells on you to generate Fury from Unending Hatred, but he doesn't have any magical effects that you can use Reverse Magic on, so you're going to get a little bit more value from the Unending Hatred in that situation. On the next tier, you're going to want Awaken the Demon Within. This is really one of your stronger talents because it gives you access to Metamorphosis without actually having the cooldown of the Metamorphosis. So if you time this correctly, when you hit 50%, you can have a strong burst window, and you can also benefit from the leech of your Soul Rending. Rushing Vault is just bad. Pinning Glare is also just bad. This is the only talent on that tier that you want to consider. For the last tier, you can consider all of them, because they all do have their uses. Mainly you want to be using Detainment because it gives you access to your crowd control ability in Prison. Even though it's on a 1-minute cooldown, it is still valuable to have in PvP. Other than that, Mana Break is good if you can make sure that you're going to get value from it. If you know you're going to come down to a situation where the enemy team is going to have someone with very low mana, then it can be good because it does do a lot of damage if the target's at really low mana. But the problem is, in Legion, most classes don't really lose mana that often, and especially in 3s, the games are going to be over really quickly in maybe like 1 or 2 minutes in the comps that you play. So it's debatable how much value you can get from Mana Break. Rain from Above actually does quite a decent amount of damage. It is kind of a troll ability because, I mean, you jump into the air and shoot Fell Lancers. It looks a little bit silly, but it does have its uses, especially if you're being trained. You can jump up and be safe from melee classes, and the Fell Lancers actually do a decent amount of damage as well. But I'd recommend Detainment most of the time. Okay, and lastly I'm going to be going over the Demon Hunter artifact tree and which talents you're aiming to get first and which is the progression order. So, obviously we're going to start off in the middle with our Fury of the Illidari, and then there is a couple of talents that you want to pick up. Obviously you want to pick up this one, you want to pick up this one, and you want to pick up this one. I actually only have 2 out of 3 Critical Chaos, which is a mistake. I should have taken all 3 of those. But basically the path you want to go first is you want to go left, you want to get Inner Demons, and then you want to go right to get Demon Speed and Rage of the Illidari, and then lastly you want to take Anguish of the Deceiver and then finish out the rest of them after you have that trait. And the reason for this is that in PvP, Inner Demons provides the most value because it's a proc that you don't have to manage, and it does a very heavy amount of burst, and if you can time, well, I guess you can't really time it properly, but if it procs at a good time, you can get a really high amount of burst, and it is the most value talent of the tier. The second one that's most valuable is going to be Rage of the Illidari, because if you can manage to keep your targets inside your Fury of the Illidari for its full duration, that 60% is going to be a high amount of damage. But I would still recommend getting Inner Demons first because the proc can do like 400k, 500k crit, and it can give you some insane burst if it lines up properly. Another thing to keep in consideration is Demon Speed, which is something you want to pick up as quickly as possible because when you get Fell Rush charges from your Blur, it's going to be really useful for you. And lastly, Anguish of the Deceiver. I calculated this to do probably like an extra 80k, 100k damage on your I-Beam. It's not really that much, and especially since you don't really want to be using I-Beam in PvP because it gets kicked, and if you get kicked you get locked out of some of your abilities, and it's kind of just annoying. I wouldn't recommend using I-Beam in a single target situation in PvP unless you do have Anguish of the Deceiver, excuse me. And then you just want to fill out the rest of the tree. Yeah, all of the other ones kind of suck, so it doesn't really matter which one you get in order. And that's it for this video. As always, if you did enjoy it, please leave a like and a subscription. It makes me happy, and I like being happy. So yeah, go ahead and do that. And I apologise for me stumbling over my words. Usually when I do this sort of thing I make myself a script, but I decided to just YOLO it and, I don't know, do it off the top of my head I suppose. But doing this sort of thing without a script is actually harder than I thought, so yeah. So whatever, I'll try and get better at it in the future. And I will be trying to upload more videos. I know I always promise to do this, but you know, I suck at keeping promises. I'll try my best. I hope I'll do it. I even updated my YouTube channel art, so I hope that will give me some motivation to make more videos. And yeah, I guess that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.